Back out of the sack, feet on the street, buns on the run. It's a Saturday here on the Power of Truth Network. Of course, in a remote location. Today we've got something for you that I think is going to be a principle you can rely on for the remainder of your days. That'll be both helpful and provide you with the kind of lifestyle you really want to lead. Let's get right to it today. Firmness of mind is the topic of this podcast. It needs no historical setting, as it is a principle capable of standing on its own. What is firmness of mind? I would call it mental determination, or the mental discipline that must precede any outwardly expressed discipline. If you know anyone, or have heard of someone that is well disciplined, perhaps they know their limits on food, alcohol, or maybe they adhere to a strict religious guideline. In any case, before they can be disciplined in action, they must first control their minds. They must first have a firmness of mind. I know when I was growing up, I heard stories of some of these martial artists like Bruce Lee, who would work out for like 15, 16 hours a day, and the type of regimen they would put their bodies through was incredible. So we could talk about its philosophical, historical, religious backgrounds or roots, but all of those would take time away from describing this powerful and not well understood and definitely underused or utilized principle of life. But the principle of firmness of mind is the basis for guiding and directing our own destinies. It's the shield which protects our minds and hearts from unwelcome visitors, and the fuel that gives us the mental power to dream dreams that are achievable. When I say the power, it's actually what makes it possible to achieve those dreams. We have the determination to stick with it and actually go after and achieve the dreams we've been dreaming. It is the essence of our reality and paradigms, and key to guiding us to that reality we choose to believe in. It is the foundation of self-discipline and the basis for learning any discipline. It is directly proportional to the physical capacity to think or concentrate, focus, ponder, all of which can be strengthened in a very same way physical capacities are strengthened, i.e. through exercise. And the understanding it takes to have a firmness of mind, I think, is the least of all required capacities, mental or physical, for any task. And I think this is demonstrated because even stubbornness is a form of firmness of mind, and although it's born out of ignorance and not what I would consider intellect. But sometimes we have to be stubborn if we're going to have a firmness of mind. We have to stick to our guns, as it were. So how do we control, exercise, and monitor our firmness of mind, our mental determination? Well, first of all, we have to have something to fasten our mind to. Who can be determined or disciplined in maintaining a diet, for example, if they first don't have a defined diet? And mentally, shape that in their minds. In fact, one of the biggest issues with dieting is the specificity required. Many people aren't sure what they can eat, how much they can eat, how often, etc. And so the mental battle gets lost and they give up. We'll get into other factors as well. But generally, most people who aren't used to living a healthy lifestyle, as an example, don't know where to start mentally. And sometimes they feel like they're chasing their tail because there's so many different opinions out there. If they have that issue where they can't mentally grasp exactly what's going to happen or what they should be doing, there is nothing mentally to be disciplined about. Does that make sense? If you have a workout regimen and you know exactly what you're going to do every day, like I'm just going to get on the treadmill and run a mile, for example, I can stick to that. I know, even though I'm tempted to get off the treadmill, that I've just got a mile, I've got to stick to it. But if you don't have a plan, if there's not anything there to be mentally disciplined about, the lack of physical discipline follows. And this is true in all aspects of our lives. So let me kind of diagram this out for you. You have the firmness of mind, which must have some kind of fastener. It must be fastened to something. you believe something, or you're trying to accomplish something. You may be trying out for a triathlon. It may be a religious goal, or maybe or a spiritual goal, I should say. Maybe it's physical, mental, or emotional. Like, for example, kids who are bullied often gear themselves up mentally before going into school. But in any case, whatever it is we're fastening our firmness of mind to, it always leads to actions. And those actions can be measured, can be monitored, are displayed before everyone. And first and foremost in ourselves, the individual. Second, in our family. Third, in community in general, the people we interact with every day. And finally, in society as a whole. So, if there are differences, that collision in our mind of the standards causes us to either hold fast to those principles or the ideals that are being taught, or we question them enough that we abandon and we don't have that firmness of mind and we let those ideas in. I almost want to paint the picture here that you have a bouncer or a gatekeeper at the horizon of your mind, and when something enters your mind, you can either accept it or reject it. That's kind of where I want you to think about this. The bouncer would throw out those thoughts that are non-compatible with the direction we're going, for example, or you might have a host or something that brings those wanted thoughts in and makes them comfortable, if I can paint a mental picture for you. But can you have fortitude without conviction? Doesn't conviction become conviction because you stick with it, because you have a firmness of mind? And can you name a superhero, a real-life hero, anyone that exhibits, these strong characteristics of leadership, or, who is infirm, as we say, mentally or otherwise? The firmness of mind that you have has to be fastened to something. What is it? Well, in the U.S. society today, we have a couple major fasteners. We have, political or ideological viewpoints that are in the secular world. There's also religious or spiritual notions out there. And generally speaking, there are various philosophies about, physical fitness, the actual physical ideals we hold to. Sometimes, people, they don't exactly know of anything in their life that they're really holding on to. That, some people say, well, don't you stand for anything? Well, no, I don't get too involved, etc., etc. Well, I think all of us have something. Maybe it's a little bit difficult for others to readily point out, but we all have something that we hold to, that we wouldn't give up. But are principles in our communities currently uniting or dividing the society over the long term? If so, what teachings can all groups find in common in order to stabilize the society? What I'm saying, this is a call for universal and uniform standards in the society. It is possible to have a unity in society, but you have to have a common fasteners, common belief structures, right? Can those who tout practices that don't require firmness of mind say that they are for a civil society? Imagine that you sign your child up for music lessons or dance lessons or gymnastics or karate or any of these things, and the instructor basically tells you, I don't mind if your child, shows up ever, really. We don't have any rules here. In fact, when they come in, I tell them some of the stuff to do, and heck, if they don't want to do it, well, it's their choice, and, we have a TV in the back, and we have, video games and stuff. If they'd rather do that, that's fine too. How would you feel about that? Wouldn't you say, hey, listen, I'm getting ready to pay some money here for this service. I expect it to be, taught in a professional way. You wouldn't tolerate that. So what if our society is like that as a whole? So can society be stronger than its weakest link? What if part of the society is that way? And if so, should the rest of the society root that out? I think we already do, don't we? We have laws that we punish people for. We send them off to prison. In the United States, we've got 2 million people there, right? So if people give in to their base desires or depression, anxiety, fear, lawless thoughts, whatever, this becomes, I think, society's greatest problem. And I expressed this a little bit earlier in one of my other podcasts about the cost of not having morals or standards in our society. Having said that, what are the destroyers of the firmness of mind? I'd say fear, doubt, carelessness, so we just don't really care what enters into our mind. Shame, others point out that we're being too rigid. What if we just have enticement by one of the 7 deadly sins? You know, remember what those are? Let's go over them real quick. Gluttony, anger, greed, sloth, envy, pride, lust. How do these draw us away from our desire to be, or to have firmness in mind? I want you to think back to a New Year's resolution that you may have had. Hey, I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to change this or do that or whatever. I saw a study one time that showed that the average New Year's resolution lasted like 47 days. So what about those who are successful? What can be said of their mental capacity? Maybe they exercise their minds a little bit stronger. But when you look at the monumental failures that we're suffering today throughout the world, especially now during these harsh economic times, we've got war, all kinds of bitterness and strife at the local and regional levels, general unrest, general uncertainty. Man, people don't have the mental clarity that they want. Can it be claimed that somewhere, because someone did not remain firm to other beliefs or principles, practices, that most of our problems arose to begin with, that we have? I think it can. As I mentioned earlier, let's take a look at the prison systems. 86% of the 2 million prisoners in America today say that they are Christian. Weren't morals, values, and social norms taught to these people, much less the law? I think we can all agree that they should have known better, and were definitely taught better. So at what point did they let these ideas enter into their minds and it became okay for them? What about on a smaller scale, when families are torn apart by addictions or reckless behavior? So somewhere in their minds, in our minds, they decided to jump the tracks and think in a way that ran counter to their beliefs, their upbringing, or whatever it was that they were holding fast to. That, my friends, was the beginning. That simple step of choice where they opened the doors of their minds was no different than King David of old, who opened his window to behold the woman bathing and did not step away. So what am I getting at here? Well, in my previous podcast, as I said, about the cost of poor values, I touted the need for morals and values in our society. I also spoke in a previous episode about the people who become convinced that they're gay, and by the gay community, for example, who otherwise would live normal heterosexual lives. Why? Because they didn't have a moral defense or a firmness of mind. Tell the intruders to buzz off. Yes, we need to instill values and morals in our society, but in the meantime, it is more important right now to stop the bleeding. What do I mean by that? Well, whatever you've been taught that upholds a good character, strong family, and peaceful society needs to be adhered to. We can work out political and social differences later, but for now, be a good citizen. Obey the laws, and especially the golden rule, until such time as we can agree as a society on what standards to live by. And then fight for good standards. Fight for higher standards. Whatever your goal, your target is, fight for that. Live up to it and make it known in society. I know that we can and must live up to the low expectations of the rule of law to have basic fundamental society peace. But I also know that we have to live by the golden rule if we're going to be genuinely happy and have higher levels of peace. And I know that none of it is possible without the self-discipline, the determination, or what I've called the firmness of mind I have spoken about here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we can and we must instill these values in ourselves and in those around us. This has been your Morality Report. Join me next time when we talk about current political issues, religious infringement, and the Constitution of the United States, among others. To have knowledge is good, but understanding and wisdom is far better. And my favorite quote, On a clear day, you can see for miles, but on a clear mind, you can see forever. This is Matthew Von Trapp. Until next time, folks, so long.